In three, we are live. We're live on YouTube, everyone. I'm glad you can make it. We are also recording the audio and we'll upload that as a podcast at the same time. So I'm going to turn off the TikTok live stream we got here going. I'm going to sign off and say, go check out the YouTube live stream because it's much higher quality. So I'm going to wait a couple minutes, see if how many people get in here. We're going to be doing some Q&A stuff, some Q&A type stuff. And I am also going to talk about a couple different topics. The main one I want to address is the COVID situation, because COVID is going to affect the NFL season and subsequently the fantasy football season. That's a given. We know that. But I want to talk about what best ways to get by that bypass coronavirus, sinking your fantasy team. Hey, everyone is joining in. We got a lot of people coming in. Drop any questions you've got, guys, and I'll get to them during the show. Alrighty, I'll give it a couple more seconds. Drop those questions. But in the meantime, while we wait for all the questions to roll in, I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID and best ways to set up your team in the day and age of COVID. And the number one thing you can do to protect your team from COVID, in a sense, is draft running backs. Draft the running back position so deep that your league mates think you're crazy. I started a thing, the 250 draft analysis, where for $2.50, I'll grade your team, write up a little report. I had a lot of people do that. And here was the main thing that I had wrong with people's teams. The main thing where I gave critique was your running back position is not deep enough. If one of these guys gets injured, or one of these guys gets COVID, or one of these guys just underproduces, your team is sunk. That was the number one piece of advice that I gave all the teams, so many teams. There are only one or two teams that didn't have that problem. So when you're in round 9 and 10, draft those guys like Zach Moss, Alexander Madison. Go for the handcuffs. And guys, draft the running backs early. Don't draft Lamar or Patrick Mahomes. That's another biggest piece of advice I can give you. All the teams that had Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, everyone who drafted them and sent in their team, their depth at the running back position was very, very bad. And then they knew it, and they had to overcompensate late in the draft with a bunch of these bench guys, and then their wide receiver position was lacking. So there's no way to draft Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes in a 12-man league and have appropriate RB depth. It can't really happen. So guys, draft the running backs early and draft them often, especially this season. The main strategy that I'm liking in my drafts and mock drafts is not to say I'm going to go running back first 3 rounds and then a wide receiver, or not to say I'm going to go running back, wide receiver, running back. The main strategy is just to say through the first 4 rounds, I want 3 running backs. This gives you some flexibility so that you're also going to probably get the best player at the draft pick. So if you do this, you're going to, if you go in and say, I'm going to go 3 running backs straight, there's a good chance you'll be in a situation where you then lock yourself into drafting a bad running back when there's a really good wide receiver available. But if you say, I'm going to allow myself 1 wide receiver in there, this bypasses that problem. And suddenly, if you're looking at, Todd Gurley or DJ Moore or Amari Cooper, you can take them and then hit the running back on the next round. Just make sure you get 3 running backs with the first 4 picks, and your team will be very good. Next piece of advice: draft quarterbacks late, draft defenses late, and draft kickers late. The kickers and defense and probably the quarterbacks if you've been playing fantasy for a while, but newer guys. I want to explain this to you. Most teams in most leagues draft only 1 quarterback, 1 defense, and 1 kicker. Most teams don't spend a pick on a backup quarterback during their draft. This means that you will have the opportunity to grab a top 12 quarterback and a top 12 defense and a top 12 kicker. Same with defenses. There are a couple of guys way above the rest at all those positions. But because they're, in a lot of leagues, there are only 12 teams and they all take one of those positions, you're going to have a chance, an opportunity, a realistic chance to have a top 12 player at those positions. That's just how it's going to unravel. And it's very rare that a team loses because their quarterback position isn't amazing, because you have to try to be bad at the quarterback position in fantasy. There's so many guys available, so many guys who put up decent numbers from week to week. Kirk Cousins going, undrafted in a lot of leagues. Gardner Minshew is going to be serviceable. There's so many players that you can draft at the quarterback position that will put up top 12 numbers for you. So just wait. There's no reason to spend that early pick. Now, what's the earliest I would take one of those quarterbacks? I would take one in the second tier, we would call it. So I'm not taking the first tier, which is Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. I'm staying away. I can't justify spending a second round pick on those guys. The earliest I would take is probably that round 2. If Kyler Murray is available or Dak Prescott is available, and I have a lot of good wide receivers and running backs. Let's say I've got my 3 running backs, one really solid wide receiver, and Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott's available, I'll do it. But I have to be in a situation where I'm extremely comfortable with my running back and wide receivers. That's the only way that I'll draft them. After that, just wait as long as you can. Just watch how your draft is going, because you're going to be able to sense it. You're going to sense, hey, the quarterbacks are starting to go. So that's my advice for that. Let me find, someone asked, have I drafted any teams yet? Let me pull up one of my teams. I just did a draft the other night, and my team's pretty good. It didn't go exactly the way I wanted, and that's why I don't like going with a specific strategy that calls for you to, a lot of times, draft players that may not be the best available. So let me go through here and find, So I have Kyler Murray as my quarterback, Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones as my main 2 running backs. And then I've got Jonathan Taylor as my RB3. Then on my bench, I've got Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, and Antonio Gibson. So this is an example of one where I strayed away from my strategy of getting 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds. And this was not what I wanted to do. It's just how the draft went that day. I drafted Dalvin Cook, and then Aaron Jones fell to me in the late second rounds. And then I had a choice between Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley or Tyreek Hill early in the third. And it made way more sense to take that elite wide receiver. So then I came back, I grabbed Jonathan Taylor, was able to grab Amari Cooper. At quarterback, I felt pretty secure with the running backs I had at that point, so I drafted Kyler Murray pretty early. And then I was able to land DJ Chark. I got Tyler Boyd, and I went heavy with the bench running backs: Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, and Antonio Gibson. Those guys all have the potential to, be the lead backs on their teams. A.J. Dillon, great handcuff for Aaron Jones. Antonio Gibson, he's making heads turn in training camp. J.K. Dobbins, I expect to eventually beat out Mark Ingram. Tyler Boyd and Robbie Anderson and Brandon Cooks are my bench wide receivers. I'm set there. I think Boyd's good. I think Brandon Cooks could be very, very serviceable this year if he stays healthy. And Anderson, he's going to give you those games where he explodes, but he's a bench guy, so I don't really need him. So that's a team. I've got TJ Hawkinson at tight end. Very comfortable with that. TJ Hawkinson, tight end, he's going to be good. So that's one of the examples of my teams. Let me find another team that I drafted. Here's one. So this is all right. This is the Fuel League on Instagram. I was not happy with how this team turned out. It was a bad draft. I can't remember what was going on, but it did not go well. So Miles Sanders is my RB1, followed by Kenyon Drake. That's good. And then I got Melvin Gordon as my RB3. So that's good. And then I got Jonathan Taylor and A.J. Dillon as my other running backs. I wasn't able to land Dobbins like I wanted, but pretty solid running backs there. My wide receivers, I got Cortland Sutton and Tyler Boyd. The wide receiver position was lacking in this draft. Those were the only 2 in each round that like stood out as good picks. And I do have Edelman, N'Keal Harry, Jerry Jeudy, and Ruggs on the bench as wide receivers. I don't think those guys are going to do amazing things this year, but I think they're guys that will have good games. And then for quarterbacks, I landed Gardner Minshew and Jared Goff, two quarterbacks that I believe in. And then the tight end, I went TJ Hawkinson again. You guys are going to learn I like TJ Hawkinson. I really like TJ Hawkinson this year. They spent, I think, 8th overall pick on him last year in the draft. They have plans for him, and he showed his potential last year against Arizona Cardinals week 1. I think he's going to be a really special player. So those are the two teams I have so far. I've got a couple other leagues. I've got a dynasty league. I can show you the dynasty league. I've got can't right now. I don't have it pulled up, but it's not as good as those two. Those two teams are my favorite teams so far. I've got another draft this weekend, though, so I'll update you guys on how that goes. So now we're going to get to some of the questions that have been asked. Alrighty. Hunter Renfrow or Deontay Johnson, the first question we've got. I'd go Hunter Renfrow. The Raiders, I almost said Oakland Raiders again. They are Vegas Raiders. Let me pull up his stats real fast. So Hunter Renfrow stats. Here's what's interesting. No one cared about him last year. I heard nothing about him in fantasy. But his last couple games, he exploded. So in week 7, he had 88 yards and a touchdown. Week 8, he had 54 and a touchdown. That's good. He came back week 12. He had 170 yards and a touchdown. Week 13, he had 102 yards and a touchdown. He had some really good weeks. And he was great in college. And guess what? The team wants a wide receiver 1. They want a wide receiver that they can depend on every single play. They targeted, picked up Antonio Brown last year, and that fell through. They spent that early round pick on Hunter Renfrow, and I think they have plans on him. So I like Hunter Renfrow more than Deontay Johnson. All right. First overall, who you taking? Saquon Barkley. Look, he's going to have a huge season. McCaffrey is going to be great as well, but I think McCaffrey has already hit his peak, if that makes sense. I don't think he has much to go up, only down from here. He's still going to be great, but Saquon, I think, hasn't reached his full potential. New offensive coordinator Jason Garrett has a long history of getting elite production fantasy-wise from his running backs. With Ezekiel Elliott, Marco Murray, I think it's going to be a really good recipe for success for Saquon this year. All right, let's see next. Hunter Renfrow, Deontay. Yes, you can still send me your team for the $2.50 draft recap. It's taking a little longer to respond to all the teams, although I think I'm caught up now. I've got 1 or 2 left to write, just because so many people sent them in on the first day that there's like a big backup. But now I'm getting to them pretty early. I have Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Sanders, Carson, Swift, and Hunt in an 18 PPR league. Should I trade a running back or not? I wouldn't. Where did it go? You've got DJ Moore and Robert Woods. Those guys are good as wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, especially if you've got that solid running back cast. I would stay with what you have. Okay. You got Nick Chubb and Terry McLaurin and gave away Miles Sanders. Good trade. Nick Chubb and Miles Sanders, especially now it looks like Sanders might be hurt. He should be back by week 1, but still early injuries are worrisome, especially on that team. The Eagles have histories of getting players injured early on. Hey, Cuddy34, how you doing? Where do you put Jacobs in a top 10 list? I would put, Zeke, Kamara. I'd put him like number 12. So not top 10, but I'd put him number 12 this year. I think he's going to be really good. Low end RB1. Drop the questions, guys. If you have any more questions, drop them below. We've talked about how to manage your team in the COVID situation. It's solved by drafting RB depths. RBs early and often. Like that old joke, like how to how do Chicago people like vote? It's early and often. Do that with the running backs. Do you think Darius Slay has potential? Yeah. Darius Slay has potential for sure. He had some great games last year. I'm not expecting him to be a superstar anytime soon, but I think he could be a reliable fantasy option and player in real life as like a wide receiver 3 flex play. I don't believe in Daniel Jones yet. I believe Daniel Jones could be good in the future, but not this year. I mean, I think he'll be better, but I don't think he's going to be amazing. I think Saquon will be the focal point of that offense, but Slay definitely has potential. So, update on the draft guide. Is the draft guide fully out? The first 12 videos were up. I wasn't able to record and edit them all and post them on YouTube because it was destroying my computer to export that many 4K videos. So they will be there. They've been written and stuff, and I'm releasing articles to the players specifically on Instagram. I'm recording a lot of TikToks, and I will do a podcast probably this coming weekend with the rest of the players sorted by divisions. So I'll do divisional breakdowns of all teams. So all the content will be available. Besides Saquon, like any Giants players, not really. I mean, Darius Slayton, we just talked about him. Darius, he could have some potential as a wide receiver 3 flex, but I'm not too high on the Giants offensively this year, apart from Saquon. T.Y. Hilton or DJ Chark? I'm going DJ Chark. DJ Chark is a beast. Go watch him play. T.Y. Hilton, not too confident about Phillip Rivers there. I mean, Hilton, good wide receiver 3. Some weeks he'll have really big games like he always does, but I like Chark more. DeAndre Hopkins this year. I don't like DeAndre Hopkins this year. I think he finishes outside the top 8 at the position. It's a combination of not having the same volume he's used to having. And I know that he's performed with quarterbacks much worse than Kyler Murray, but I think it's going to be really hard on a new team in a new system with new coach, new quarterback, new everything, especially when they haven't had, the full offseason or training camps or anything. So I think it's going to be hard for him. And I think he's going to be top 12, but not top 8. All right, let's see what else we got. What are some big problems for large leagues and how can you avoid them? So the problem you're going to have in a large league is if you got, let's say, 16 people in league, you won't have all starting players. That's the problem. You're going to have a lot of bench guys on your starting lineups a lot of times. Players like A.J. Dillon are going to be maybe starters, stuff like that. So that's one of the problems. One way this is avoided if you've got a big group of people you want to draft there, one is if you got a really big group, you can do one where they're duplicates of players. That's fun. But a guillotine league where you've got, let's say, 16 players, would work. And after every week, the lowest scoring team, there are no head-to-head matchups. It's just total points every week. The lowest scoring team, they are eliminated from the league and their players are dropped onto the roster. So the final week would be the last 2 teams with super teams with, everyone's players that they had to drop because they got eliminated. So 2 super teams going head-to-head for the Super Bowl. That's one way to get by the problem with a big league. If you want to do a normal big league, they're still fun, but it's just a lot different, and I don't like it as much. Would you draft Lamar Jackson in the 3rd round if he's there? If he falls to the 3rd round, yes, depending on what else is available. If I'm in the 3rd round and, let's say I'm trying to think of a realistic player who could draft in the 3rd round. Leonard Fournette is in the 3rd round. No, I'm not taking Lamar there. But if I am to the end of the running back 1s and 2s, then yeah, I will take him there. But I don't want to. I could, but I would probably not. All right, let's see. What else do we got? Derek Carr be a top 15 quarterback this year. So Derrick Henry. No. I'm looking at the next question. Derek Carr, not Henry. It's interesting. I remember a day when he was supposed to be the next Brett Favre, the next MVP. He was going to save the Raiders, and things haven't gone that well for him, especially recently. Now, will he be top 15 this year in a rejuvenated offense? Hard to say. I don't know. I think whoever is the quarterback for the Raiders will be top 15, if that makes sense. I think whoever they end up having will be top 15. I think the combined production fantasy wise will be top 15. I just don't know if he's going to maintain the job. I think if Carr beats out Mariota and keeps him off the whole season, he will be top 15. Yes. I think if Marcus Mariota takes over and beats out Derek Carr, then he will be top 15, if that makes sense. David Montgomery is a flex RB3. Yep. All day long. He's going to have opportunity, a lot of volume. He's still talented. He's not going to be a superstar, but he's still really good. He's still very good. Out of all the starting rookie running backs, who do you think is the smartest one to go with? Smartest in terms of draft position would be J.K. Dobbins, followed by Jonathan Taylor, followed by DeAndre Swift. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, it's not a smart or unsmart. He hardly counts at this point because he's the only running back rookie who's like the main guy already, so there's not much to talk about. But those guys are all going later than a lot of other players, and I think they could be RB1s if a couple things go right. If the person from them gets injured, suddenly they're stars. They've got that much talent. So those guys I'm all pretty high on. Very high on Waller. Yeah, Waller's good. He'll be top 6 easily. Darren Waller is really good. So yeah, Ruggs will help him out. So will Renfro. Just the better that offense is, the better Waller will be. Jonathan Taylor or Marquise Hollywood Brown at flex week 1. Goodness, week 1. I mean, I haven't looked at individual weekly matchups. Week 1, it looks like Taylor plays the Jaguars. And Hollywood Brown plays the Browns. Okay, yeah, I would start Hollywood Brown at flex that first week, especially since we don't know what the timeshare will look like yet. Zach Moss is an RB4. Nah, he's a little later than that, but I do want him on my roster, but just not as the 4th RB, probably 5th or 6th. Is Henry a bust? So I don't think Henry's going to per se bust, but I think he will not be as good as last year because he needs, here are a couple things. Yes, Conklin is gone, but also he has to have a huge game to have a good game. To have 16 points, he needs 100 yards and a touchdown, whereas other running backs, could do 5 catches, 50 yards, a couple run, stuff like that. He has to have such a big game for him to have, 24 points or so. He is like 200 yards. It's crazy. He has to do so well to be a top 5 guy. And that's the thing. That's what's tempting is because we know he can do that well. He's done that well. But it's hard to rely on elite production every single week when he has no built-in PPR points. Didn't have a single game last year with over 4 targets or over 3 targets. Not a single game over 3 targets. So I'm staying away. DJ Chark or AJ Brown as wide receiver 2. Chark. I'm going Chark. I think AJ Brown is going to be great eventually, but not this year. I'm not trusting him with Ryan Tannehill there. I know Tannehill blew up last year. I know. I watched the games. But we have enough of a sample size to say Tannehill is not the most accurate passer in the league. So when I look at his stats from the stretches last year, and see, he is a top 5 quarterback, I say no. He had a stretch. He got hot like Nick Foles did. But he's not someone who will always be that. He's going to return more to what we know him as when he was on Miami, which is an average quarterback. He's not bad, but he's pretty average. I do not play fantasy baseball. I do follow baseball pretty loosely. Favorite team is the Tampa Bay Rays. I haven't watched any baseball though this year since the Corona stuff. It's hard for me to keep interested in baseball with the season so long. but I do like it. Be a Jets fan. Oh, okay. I will announce my favorite teams. My favorite AFC team is going to be the New York Jets. And my favorite NFC team, I'm going to have two, AFC, NFC, is the Arizona Cardinals. Big fan of Kyler Murray. And I interviewed Andy Isabella on the show. So you gotta be a fan of them. I mean, I talked to one of their players. So big fan of those two teams now, I guess. That will not mean my advice is biased ever. That is one of the things I market myself, completely unbiased fantasy football opinions. That's going to continue the same. Why not Redskins? Because they aren't called the Redskins anymore, the Washington football team. And I cannot cheer for a team that's called the Washington football team. All right, I can't do that. That's just so disappointing. So Jets versus Cardinals, who you're rooting for? In a head-to-head matchup, Cardinals would have the tiebreaker just because they don't have Adam Gase. I still really dislike Adam Gase. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but just as a coach, he's one of my least favorites ever. He is my least favorite. So they would have the head-to-head matchup win over them. All right, we've got a couple more minutes in the live stream before I log off, before I go I've got an interview on a podcast. I'll talk about that later on TikTok. But if no one else has any more questions, we're approaching, 30 minutes. So I'll do a couple more. Dream offense with your favorite players. So favorite players of all time. Quarterback 1 would be Brett Favre. Wide receiver 1 would be Calvin Johnson. Same name as me. Awesome. Wide receiver 2 would be Andy Isabella. He's my second favorite because I talked to him. Running back 1 would be Chris Johnson. Running back 2 would be Devin Singletary, one of my favorite players. Tight end would be Tony Gonzalez. I was a big fan of him as a kid. And then for kicker, my favorite kicker is... I'm trying to think if there are any kickers I remember the names of. Oh, Josh Lambo. Josh Lambo, the kicker for the Jaguars. He seems like such a cool guy. I don't know why. I just follow him on Instagram. He seems really cool. So Josh Lambo would be my dream kicker. How much are you going to be doing these? So the live streams. So with college, I'm a lot busier now than I was back in high school. So I still want to produce the same amount of content. The problem is the biggest bulk of my time for the profit goes into editing videos and uploading them. So a live stream gets rid of that whole process and it makes it less time consuming. So a 30-minute video would take me like an hour to edit and then like another 2 hours to upload. Whereas doing a 30-minute live takes 30 minutes. So I'm going to be doing a lot of these. I'm probably going to be doing 2 a week, probably one on Monday morning, recapping the week, and then probably one on Friday or Saturday night, depending on my work schedule, kind of giving an overview of the matchups. So kind of 2 a week with the podcasts, and then I'll continue making the TikToks and Instagrams. So yeah, that's the schedule right now. Justin Tucker sings opera. Justin, what? I did not know that. Okay, Justin Tucker is my new favorite kicker, I guess. I do remember my favorite moment with Justin Tucker. He comes in an interview, and he goes, "You guys smell that?" I say, "Smell what?" He's like, "Smells like up dog." And he said that bad dad joke after like kicking a game-winning 50-yard field goal. So he definitely seems funny. I like Tucker, and he's good. Who would be a good RB to take in the first round? Whichever falls to you. The first round running backs, like apart from the big 5, I guess it is now, Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, any that fall to you are the ones to go with. I don't like Chubb as much as Mixon. I don't like Sanders as much as Josh Jacobs. And I don't like Kenyon Drake as much as Miles Sanders. That's kind of how it goes. But just whichever one you can get in that first round, they're going to be good. They're going to be good, barring injury or COVID. So we are hitting 30 minutes of the live stream, so I'm going to say sayonara. Dalvin Cook, no, I'm not worried about the injuries. I talked to Fantasy Doc several times about Dalvin Cook, and if they're like a full season, removed from an ACL injury, then you no longer need to worry about the ACL injury. So I'm not worried. I trust him. He knows his stuff. Now, if something happens with Dalvin Cook again, I will say he's injury prone. But whatever happened last year, the shoulder thing, that was completely unrelated to any ACL. So no, I'm not worried about it. Edwards-Helaire or Drake? Goodness, they're tied for me. I would personally use the tiebreaker and go Drake just because we've seen him produce. But Edwards-Helaire, I can't criticize you taking him over Drake. All right, guys, we're at 30 minutes. Thank you so much for watching the first or second live stream that I've done. I hope it looked good with the camera. Still figuring out the ins and outs of live streaming. This is really the first time I've done it. So the house cleaning tips. Go follow TheProFFet on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, although you're already here. And it's spelled TheProFFet with 2 F's for fantasy football, because that's fantasy football. You get it. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other podcast service, and leave a 5-star review. Alrighty, and tomorrow on the TikTok, I will be announcing the official winner of the I Heart Terry sticker. See you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Not sure how to end it. 1 second.